taking notes from nobody.
Jaylen Brown.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at Celtics Talk Weekly.
Welcome into Celtics Postgame Live, everybody. I'm Justin Lowe, alongside with me, Seamus Darlingo, a.k.a. Celtics Every Day. And the Celtics defeat the Charlotte Hornets 115-101 behind an absolute masterpiece, yet another masterpiece by Jason Tatum. 44 points on an extremely efficient 16 of 24 from the floor, along with 6 of 9 shooting from three. Seamus, we have a lot to get into as Ian will be joining us later on in the show. The Celtics go for their fourth straight victory. Al Horford, Robert Williams, each with a double-double, 11 and 11 for Robert Williams, who all game was battling with foul trouble, hence why you didn't even see him break the 20-minute mark. Al Horford showing signs that he is still 25 years old. He ain't no 35. He's 25 years old. 10 and 10 for him, along with 3 steals and 3 blocks. Obviously, Jason Tatum, the story of the night. Jaylen Brown struggled a little bit, but was able to dish out 5 assists, grab 5 rebounds, along with 15 points. Off the bench, Derek White, Seamus, which we're going to get to Tatum. I thought Smart had a good game as well, but can we talk about your guy, Derek White, who we just acquired at the trade deadline just about a month ago? 11 points, 3 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks, 5 of 11 shooting. That's all off the bench. That's all in 31 minutes and 11 seconds off the bench. Seamus, what do you have to say, not only about the Celtics win, we'll get to Tatum later, but your boy Derek White did everything right tonight?
Well, first of all, Jason Tatum, just got to put on the shades real quick because
I love it.
Jason Tatum
I love it.
is hot. I'm going to take them off real quick because they're fogged up as hell, but Jason Tatum is ridiculous right now. Jason Tatum is on a run that earlier I said on my live, and I think I said it on postgame the other night, where we're in the midst of Jason Tatum. We saw him go from a high-level role player to a star in 2020, right?
Right.
And right now we're seeing the ascension of Jason Tatum going from a star, an all-star level player, to a superstar level of player. And it's all happening right now. We're seeing it in the past week here. He goes for 33 against Trae Young, goes for 37 against the Grizzlies, and then he goes for 54 against the Nets right before he goes for 44 against the Charlotte Hornets. Now, granted, not the best defenses you're facing in that stretch with Atlanta, Brooklyn, and Charlotte, but the fact that Tatum in Memphis, shout out Memphis, they're the one good defensive team in that stretch. The fact that Tatum is having this sort of run right now in the midst of now the Celtics need to make a run or continue to make a run at the end of the season here where they have only 15 games left until the playoffs. It's all coming together not only for Tatum, but the Celtics as a whole right now. And there are some other concerns on the team. Like you mentioned, Jaylen Brown didn't play nearly as well as you might have liked for him to play tonight. There were just some uncharacteristic turnovers for him, but the rest of the team just is clicking on all cylinders right now. And hopefully this continues the next 15 games. And right now where we're going and the trend we're following, I don't think it's ever going to stop.
It is unbelievable about how he's playing, Seamus. And it's not his offense that's clicking. It's his defense as well, Seamus. He's everywhere. And I mean, he's turned into a phenomenal defensive player. And that's exactly what this team needs, right? And we also we sat here in the beginning of the season as Ian joins us. We sat here in the beginning of the season and a handful of us said Tatum needs to be a playmaker. A handful of us says, no, Jason Tatum needs to feed off of people and he needs to score the basketball. We're getting both of that. And don't you know, that's helping the Celtics win big time. Big time. Not only is Jason Tatum playmaking, not only is he defending, he's scoring at a high level and he's consistently doing it. And the people around him are also consistently doing it. I think Smart has stepped into that facilitating point guard game role really, really well. But yeah, enough of you and I. Ian, What are your initial thoughts on this game? We touched on Tatum so far, talked about Derek White off the bench, how phenomenal he's been. I know we didn't really get to see a lot of Rob, not even 20 minutes tonight, due to the fact he had, I believe it was 4 fouls at the half.
Yeah, it's Jason Tatum's world, and we're just all lucky to live in it. I mean, what else can you say? He tied a franchise record. He's had 98 points in the last 2 games. I mean, Jason Tatum as a scorer is one of the most gifted scorers we have in the NBA right now, and that's saying a lot with Kevin Durant and LeBron still playing at the level they are playing at. And right now, I'm not afraid to say Jason Tatum is probably right now over the last couple of weeks, he's been the best player in the NBA over the last couple of weeks. He has been amazing. And the rest of the team is feeding off of him. And this is what we expected Jason Tatum to be this season at the start of the year.
Right.
This is what we all expected from him. We knew he could reach this, but I mean, I guess it's better time than any to have this sort of run that he's on right now. I mean, it's just incredible watching Jason Tatum play basketball. And
his shooting numbers also, Ian, sorry to cut you off, but his shooting numbers are like unbelievable. 16 of 24. I know,
he's insanely efficient right now. 16 to 24, 6 of 9 from 3.
He shot 16 of 30 against Brooklyn on 54 points. It's getting better and better.
He's reaching the level where you don't really expect him to miss all that much anymore. Right. It reached that point in 20 where if he missed a shot, it was like, oh, that's pretty odd. Getting to that point again where in that fourth quarter, anytime he took a shot, you thought that's going in. That's going in. Yeah. That's going in. And it went in every single time. Right. Nearly every single time.
In the second half, Jason Tatum turned it up. Like, I mean, he had a good first half. Yeah. I think he had 20 at the half. But, like, the
16.
second half, he was absolutely incredible in the second half in the fourth quarter, where he needed like 16 points in the fourth quarter to get 50. I'm like, oh, well, maybe he can do it. But when he started scoring, I'm like, okay, he could legitimately get 50 in the fourth quarter. Like, that's how insane he was this game. And he has been over the last week or so. I mean, it's so much fun to watch. And, you know, it's been a tough stretch, at least, you know, Jaylen Brown coming off an injury. So he didn't have the greatest game tonight, but it didn't matter. Derek White stepped up. Marcus Smart stepped up. Sorry. Al Horford stepped up. I mean, everyone around them, the supporting cast is stepping up, and it's so nice to see. And I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm just happy. I'm just enjoying watching the Celtics play basketball. I'm disappointed when I can't watch the Celtics play basketball right now. Like, it is so much fun watching this team play right now.
These little 2-day breaks that the Celtics have been consistently getting have been so frustrating, because when we saw them in the beginning of the season, it was the worst because we'd always be sitting on a loss. Now that we're playing good, and you know, we just want to keep it rolling, we get these stupid two-day breaks, which we're going to see multiple times this month. But if you haven't guessed, Jason Tatum is your player spotlight tonight. As we take a look at the player spotlight totals, the leaderboards, Jason Tatum leads the way this season with 17. Jaylen Brown trails him with 11, and the rest is history. You can see some guys who got dished out at the trade deadline, still on the list, but Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown leading the way pretty heavily thus far this season for the Celtics. Again, Tatum with 17 player spotlights. Guys, I want to talk about the point guard spot. I really want to talk about the point guard. Marcus Smart, 9 assists tonight. And then when he was on the bench, Derek White came in and he had 8 assists tonight. How big is that for this team to have 2 guys nearly the same play style? One sits, the other one comes off the bench. One starts, the other one comes back in. That's unbelievable, Seamus. That is a huge piece to have on this team.
Yes, much more valuable too, I must point out, than Dennis Schroeder and Josh Richardson being on the roster. No offense to those guys, but if you just look at what the Celtics actually did at the deadline, is they made the roster make more sense. It makes way more sense to have Derek White on this roster. It makes more sense to have Derek White next to Tatum and Brown and even Marcus Smart out there, and even staggering those two players than to have Josh and Dennis Schroeder try to take over that role, because those two guys just simply aren't those type of players where they're making the correct decisions all the time. They're being efficient on both ends of the floor, not only offensively, but defensively as well. And you mentioned it too, both, Marcus Smart and Derek White, similar play styles. And the fact that the Celtics have both of those guys they can work with now going into the playoffs, that should give fans and the team and the coaching staff, of course, much, much more confidence that this team can actually go out and make a run during the playoffs, because they have that extra piece within their rotation that they simply did not have in November, December, and even January, when this team was just off the rails on a nightly basis where we didn't know where they were going. The Celtics, that's a huge, huge part. We talk about all these parts, Jason Tatum taking his game up to another level, Smart realizing what he needs to do on a nightly basis to make an impact, but also the Celtics changing their roster around, opening up the rotation a little bit more to guys like Peyton Pritchard. You slot in now Derek White into the situation. It just makes more sense surrounding the team, and it made more sense after the deadline. And now we're getting to this point that where we're going to have to prove it in the playoffs, and when it comes time, I believe this team will.
I was kind of confused, guys, as to what I was watching tonight by the Charlotte Hornets. Scal pointed it out on the broadcast. How the Hornets were, they are coming off a second night of a back-to-back, but also when you get smacked on your home court, whether it's a back-to-back or not, and you let somebody score 50 points on your home court, the next night, you bet your butt you should be ready to go, right? And not let this happen again, especially when you're in jeopardy of not only losing seeding, but the Washington Wizards say they go on a run, and all of a sudden they get in the play-in, and the Hornets are all of a sudden out. That's how close things are in the East, right? These guys played with no fire tonight. There was a couple possessions in that third quarter where they actually took a 3-point lead, but that didn't really matter. LaMelo Ball, six turnovers, 5 fouls. Very, very sloppy game. He only played 28 minutes. He did not break that 30-minute mark. He was benched in that. He didn't play at all in the second quarter. Actually, Coach Borrego for the Hornets threw Isaiah in there for some minutes. And Miles Bridges was non-existent until that little second, third quarter, couple and one plays. What was going on with the Hornets? Is this something... I know they're not that good of a defensive team, but effort-wise, they should be embarrassed. They nearly let two guys back-to-back nights score 50 points on their home court on a blowout loss.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's a back-to-back, and I take that into consideration. The Celtics have lost back-to-back games against bad teams this year so far.
Yeah.
So, that does take into account, but I mean, you just let Kyrie Irving have one of the most efficient games a player has had
ever
all season, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, he played absolutely insane yesterday, and coming in, I mean, Jason Tatum is on another level right now.
Right.
But you didn't even try to stop him in the second half. Just gave up. You had a chance to win this game.
Then with 2 minutes left, they started to double team when they were down.
They actually started playing defense instead of just with 2 minutes left. Maybe they would have won this game, but I don't know. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about, because I honestly expected Charlotte to make an actual chance at the playoffs this year, but they got to fix their defense, man. They have to fix their defense. Now, they did play a pretty physical game tonight, which was really uncharacteristic of them, which was really weird, because I don't remember the Charlotte Hornets being a physical defensive team instead of being they're normally the high-flying offense, and their offense was non-existent. I didn't even think LaMelo Ball was on the court in most of the night.
Yeah,
even when he was on the court, he didn't look like he was doing anything.
Right.
So,
and Rozier had an off night, who usually, unfortunately, he's a Celtic killer. And then,
honestly, Isaiah Thomas was probably their best player tonight. Not even lying. Outside of maybe P.J. Washington. P.J. Washington played great in the first quarter and the first half. Other than that, Isaiah Thomas was their best player tonight, and that's really, really sad.
I mean, it's pretty deflating when
it's pretty bad.
Say you're the Hornets, right? It's pretty deflating when you gave up 9 offensive rebounds in the first quarter. Out of all the quarters, it was the first quarter. 7 of them went to Robert Williams. Seamus, remember you and I were talking a few post-game shows back when we lost to the Pistons, and the first thing you said before I introed the show was the Celtics in the second half only had 7 rebounds that entire half. The Celtics had 9 offensive rebounds in the first quarter tonight. That is unbelievable. Seamus, do you think that had any toll of kind of where this game is going for the Hornets? Like Ian said, at moments the Hornets were playing, really physical in that second half. You think they were looking back? No way we just let up 9 offensive rebounds in the first quarter of this ball game.
Well, I never had a doubt that the Celtics could pull this game out, especially at halftime. And you look at what happened last night in Charlotte and what happened tonight, and I think we can all say that the Charlotte Hornets might be one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. And even after last night's performance, after Kyrie dropped 50 on him, that was surely impressive by him and what Tatum did tonight. But I looked at both of those performances and went, man, they're not facing that great of a defensive team whatsoever. Both of those guys, Tatum and Kyrie, I mean, imagine if those guys were on the same team, man, it would be crazy. But those 2 guys just went insane on this team. They were getting to the point of Tatum tonight. You mentioned in the second half how they just gave up on Tatum. Tatum scored 28 points on 9 of 12 shooting in the second half. Scored 28 on 9 made field goals. That's insane. And it's surely enough, too, we always talk about with defense. Defensive rebounding is so important, and it's something that we'll miss we talk about defense so often, but defensive rebounding is one of the most important parts of defense. You cannot be a good defensive team if you do not grab defensive rebounds. That is just a fact. To end a defensive possession, you have to grab the rebound with 2 hands right here. You have to grab the rebound. And the fact that the Celtics had 9 offensive rebounds in the first half and it ended up being 10 at halftime, and I don't remember what they finished with for the game, but they were just dominating in that category, especially in the first half. That just showed you and displayed to all the fans that, hey, the Charlotte Hornets, they're not really here to play, especially on the defensive end of the floor. And I think a lot of that was effort and the fact that they just don't have good defenders in the first place at all.
Right. What about Al Horford, fellas? Because a few months ago, he went on this really cold streak for about 2 to 3 weeks, and we were like, oh boy, could Al possibly be dealt? Not that we wanted him to be dealt, but I mean, his contract and all of that, and maybe he is aging a little bit, but all of a sudden, Al Horford, I shouldn't say all of a sudden, but Al Horford has certainly broken out of that slump and playing unbelievable. I mean, he's a double-double machine at the age of 35. I know he doesn't like to talk about his age too much, but I mean, you gotta mention it because what he's doing at his age on this team, it's unbelievable. And he's exceeding, I think, every expectation that we ever had when we acquired him in that trade for Kemba Walker. When we traded for him, when we traded for Al, we knew we were taking on that contract. We knew he did have a pretty good season with the Oklahoma City Thunder. When he did play, he was actually helping them win too many games. They actually had to sit him so they could get a lottery pick. And then he's doing he's our starting 4 at times, shifting to the 5 at times they do. But he's been unbelievable. 10 points, 10 rebounds tonight. He's been big down ever since right out of the All-Star break. Ian, what does this do for the Celtics to have Al Horford play like this? I mean, that whole starting 5, obviously, we got to give them their roses, but especially Al Horford, Ian, where, like I said, he's exceeding every expectation that we might have ever had when we acquired him in that trade.
Honestly, Al Horford is it feels like he's bringing a different type of energy every night.
Yeah.
I mean, we know how good Robert Williams is on the defensive board. Like on the rebounding side of things, Robert Williams is one of the best in the league. Al Horford's not too far behind him when it comes to games. You know, there's some games where Robert Williams ends with like 11 rebounds, and tonight Al Horford ends with 10.
Yeah.
I mean, Al Horford is, you know, he's doing his job, to steal a quote from the Patriots. I mean, he's doing his job. He's going in. He's playing great defense. And, you know, everyone's like, oh, he's 35, so he might be a step behind. No, he's catching up to everybody.
And he played 34 minutes. 34 minutes tonight, I remember.
34 minutes tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, it's honestly kind of insane to see how good Al Horford is. Now, granted, it might be because he had like a whole vacation last year, so maybe he's just refreshed and he's trying to prove to people that, yes, he is still a legit player in this NBA. But it's so nice to see Al Horford out there because, honestly, you forget he's 35. You really do. Like, I mean, granted, they don't want to talk about it, but we forget that he's 35 years old. The 35-year-old should not be staying with people on defense as good as he's doing. So I'm just very impressed with Al Horford this year. I mean, overall, even though he was struggling at one point, it still didn't feel like, you know, we were ever going to say, oh, do we bench Al Horford? No. Yeah. I mean, he's been a great addition to this team, and it's something that this team severely needs.
And I think the number one thing that is underrated with Al's game right now, or just in general with Al, is the fact that he's in shape. We look at so many 30-plus-year-olds in the NBA, and a consistent between the ones that, you know, go on to have a long career after the age of 30 and the ones who don't have a long career after the age of 30 is health. The guys who, you know, are good at 35 are healthy. The guys like CP3, LeBron James, those guys, obviously mega superstars, but those guys, their dieting, the money they spend on their bodies over the offseason, the amount of work that they put in to stay healthy through a consistent period of time, that all pays off. And Al Horford, I looked at him earlier this season, and, you know, I kind of thought to myself, you know, the more in shape 35-year-olds in the NBA.
Right.
You just look at him, he does not look 35. You mentioned, Ian, he looks more like he's in his 20s, at least his late 20s. And that all is due to the fact that he stays on his body, makes sure that he's healthy on a night-to-night basis to go out there and actually make an impact. In that little period of time last year where he didn't play, that probably did so much for him going into this season, because right now, you know, if he's playing consistent minutes last year, if he plays another, you know, say if he's on a playoff team last year and he plays, you know, 2 or 3 rounds, is he this healthy this season right now? Is he this ready to go on a playoff run this year? I think the answer is probably no. And, you know, two, you look at with Al Horford, the way the Celtics have managed his minutes over the season and the way they've kind of strategically rested him at times. There was that game about a week ago. I don't remember which game it was. I believe it was the Pacers game, the one that we lost.
Yeah, they rested
him. Sat him. They just sat him, healthy scratch. That was a rest game. We ended up losing, bit us in the ass. But, you know, the way that they've managed his minutes throughout the season and the way that they've strategically rested him, that all pays off in the end. Hopefully, going into the playoffs, we'll see a 100% healthy Al Horford. We're seeing it right now. He can be a really, really impactful player, even though he is 35 years old.
Right. One other thing I want to say about Al, his three-point shooting over the last couple of weeks, I mean, he is turning into a legit three-point. I mean, he's making his threes.
Yeah.
You know, I remember the game, it was the Memphis game that I went to. He hit like 5 threes in that game. And, I mean, it was like, where was this all season?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been struggling this year from 3. So it's nice to see. And one of my favorite plays from this game was when, you know, the Hornets were going on a run. Bridges had those 2 and 1s. And what did Al Horford do? He just ran to the top of the key and hit a 3 right off the bat. And it changed the momentum in a way. It slowed the game down. And I'm just impressed with Al Horford. And I really, really like what Al Horford is for this team right now.
This is obviously a huge win for the Celtics. Their 4th straight win, 115-101 over the Charlotte Hornets. But, guys, I do want to focus ahead here. I want to take a look ahead because the Celtics have a tough schedule coming up as we take a look at the upcoming schedule. Friday, we'll get into this game, our next game, Friday, March 11th at the Garden, taking on the Detroit Pistons, who have given the Celtics some trouble. Then we see on Sunday, Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks on KG night. And then we go on that 5-game West Coast road trip against the Warriors, the Kings, the Nuggets. But what do you guys see in this schedule coming up? I mean, this is definitely a tough schedule. March definitely might not be as easy as February was, but so far the Celtics have proved themselves against some pretty good teams here so far. What do we see in these next 5 games, Seamus, from the Celtics? I mean, obviously, like I said, you see the Golden State Warriors who are struggling. Will they have Draymond Green that game? Maybe yes, maybe no. We see Luka Doncic in this stretch. We see Sabonis and Fox. We also see Jokic, the MVP.
MVP.
Yeah, they're all games that theoretically the Celtics can win, but they have to show up for. Pistons have played us hard all season. The Mavericks, they're hitting their stride right now. Although they're taking a tough beating by the net at the moment. The Warriors scuffling despite a good win over the Clippers last night. And the Kings, they're basically in an existential state of mediocrity. We all know about the Sacramento Kings. And then the Nuggets, that's going to be a pretty big game on March 20th at their arena. It's always, every time we go to Denver, it seems like we play them in a pretty big game, or a pretty good game, rather. And that's probably going to be our toughest matchup, either that one or the Mavericks matchup. But you never still, 2 weeks away almost, that Nuggets game. These are 5 games that you expect the Celtics to go out and win. But, do I think they're going to go 5-0? Probably not. I'm probably looking at a 4-1 record here if I'm with the Celtics. And hopefully on this little stretch here, get to that next. They should mention, too, on this list, there's the first 3 games of a West Coast road trip.
Right.
So that West Coast trip, these 2 games home at the Garden, the Pistons and the Mavericks, those are going to be 2 important games to go out and grab, because, the West Coast road trip, you never know what can happen out West, especially in those last 2 games that are not up on this board, where the Celtics, they're going to be on the road for nearly a week plus 10 days. And these 2 games at home are going to be important going on that stretch, to their insurance games per se. And right now, with 15 games left in the season for the Celtics, every game is going to matter, because we're only 4.5 games out of the ones right now. So we're play for, any of the seeds in front of us, and even any of the seeds behind us. We could still fall back into the play-in theoretically, although we aren't 4 games up. But the Celtics, they need to show up for every single game, no matter what, down the stretch.
Right. And
yeah.
Right. Ian, what are your thoughts on those 5 games? Obviously, your boy Luka, who you've had a lot of emotional pain over every time the Celtics have played, every time. And on top of that, that's KG night. We don't need to relive a Paul Pierce night where the Celtics got wiped on Paul Pierce night. Hopefully, we don't see that again. But what are your thoughts? These are some, like Seamus said, important 5 games coming up. You got to get those 2 at home, get some momentum going back out on that road, because when we saw that first West Coast trip in the beginning of the season, Celtics had an awful, awful road trip. But what are they going to do here in these next 5 games?
I mean, staying healthy, honestly, I think is our biggest thing. I mean, a healthy Celtics team against some of these bigger contenders like the Warriors or the Mavericks, I mean, that's going to be super important. KG night's going to be really emotional. I mean, KG was all of our, the guys growing up, we watched Kevin Garnett win that championship in 2008. So,
Right.
I mean, it's going to be an emotional night for sure. And I'm hoping it's not another Paul Pierce night, because when we got wiped by Cleveland, that was probably one of the most depressing games I've ever watched. But I'm really excited for that. It's going to be a tough game versus the Mavericks and versus the Warriors. Although the Warriors are basically turning into what the Celtics were in the beginning of the year, with Draymond Green being out. And, they kind of, I saw what Seamus posted earlier today. He was talking about how they kind of have a Gordon Hayward problem with Klay Thompson at this moment, which was really interesting, because it kind of looked like that. They're running Klay Thompson in crunch time, in the fourth quarter, even when Jordan Poole is playing really well. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the Warriors are like by the time we play them. The Nuggets game, it's always difficult. Jokic always slices everyone up no matter what. I don't think we're going to beat the Kings by 60 again, although, maybe a 30-point
You never
blowout
know.
this time will be a lot better. I mean, you never know unless Sabonis and Fox don't play. And then I have a little more faith in this West Coast trip because hopefully, we're a lot more healthier than we were back in December. So, because before that, the West Coast trip was when our entire team got sick, basically. Like we were running lineups with Romeo Langford and I don't know, Joe Johnson was playing. So it was a rough time. It was a rough time. It was a rough patch, but
Yeah.
So I have a lot more faith in this West Coast trip than I did back in December.
Yeah, and Jaylen Brown wasn't healthy during that trip as well with his hamstring. But I wanted to gauge your guys' opinions tonight because Jaylen Brown, 6 of 16 tonight, and Justin with stats earlier, 6 of 16, he only 15 points, along with 5 rebounds and 5 assists. Does he look healthy right now to you guys?
No, he doesn't. I was thinking that in the first half, and it's not scary. It's not alarming. But go ahead.
No, go ahead, Justin. I want your take on this before I go in this.
No, I don't think it's scary. I don't think it's alarming. What I think it is concerning in a way where was he rushed back because we saw these games on the schedule. We saw, we saw the who did we put? We saw Memphis on the schedule. We saw Brooklyn on the schedule. We saw Hornets, and then upcoming we're going to see Dallas and Golden State and Denver. Like these are some big, highly anticipated matchups for the Celtics down the stretch of the season. Is Jaylen Brown really healthy, or did they rush him back and see the opponents that the Celtics have and hope that, okay, he's good enough to play, but we got to watch him? And there's no minute restriction, but he doesn't look healthy, and I don't think he looked all particularly that great in that Brooklyn game. I know he had 21 points and he hit that game-winning shot or, the game-clinching shot, but that's a good point, Seamus. He didn't look all that healthy and springy like he usually does, especially tonight against the Hornets.
Yeah, I thought Jaylen Brown. I thought Jaylen Brown tonight just looked completely hobbled. We saw him miss a game after spraining his ankle last week against the Atlanta Hawks. He missed that Grizzlies game, then came back after 2 days rest for that Nets game. But tonight he just did not look like himself at all. A couple of uncharacteristic turnovers. They kept mentioning on the Hornets broadcast, oh, he's having trouble with his handle. And I was just thinking, it looks like he's having trouble moving side to side laterally. And I wonder if moving forward, there's, like I talked about with Al Horford, they just strategically rest him. The team has strategically rest him and gauged his minutes and, made sure his minutes are intact. I wonder if they do the same with Jaylen Brown down the stretch because, I've said this earlier in the season, it's much more important to be healthy come playoff time than in the regular season. And although this stretch is important, these next 15 games are very, very important. You still want to have Jaylen Brown 100% come playoff time.
Correct.
And if he's not, the Celtics' chances of going far in playoffs dwindle entirely.
And they didn't have JB in the playoffs last year, did they?
No, they did not. I was just going to say that because that was the problem last year. Jaylen Brown got hurt with 7 games left in the season last year and missed the rest of the year with his ankle injury. So, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Jaylen Brown doesn't play on Friday. I feel like you give him another 2-3 days rest because I agree with you. He did not look good at all. He looked like he had trouble even moving, walking around the court. He was hobbled. So, if I'm the Celtics, I'm playing it very cautious with Jaylen Brown. I know we have a lot of tough games coming up, but I mean, it's a lot more important for the Celtics to have Jaylen Brown healthy in the playoffs because if he's not and he gets hurt somewhere down the stretch here, then we're kind of screwed again, like we were last year. So
Right.
I feel like I can definitely see Jaylen Brown sitting out at least 3-4 games the rest of the way. I can see him sitting out a few more games, honestly.
And especially when the first round matchup, no matter what, we know the first round matchup isn't going to be easy for the Celtics because this Eastern Conference, it's so wide open and it's so compact, and there's some really, really talented teams out there. And, other teams need to get healthy as well. They got to get Kyrie and Ben Simmons playing. They also, you look out, you got to get a consistent Kyle Lowry and a Duncan Robinson healthy at times, PJ Tucker. For the Miami Heat. And then obviously you see Caruso and Lonzo Ball and Vucevic out there in Chicago. Those guys got to get healthy. But, guys, we're coming up on our time. But we do have a game Friday against the Detroit Pistons. Let's take a look at the final showdown. These are the two teams' stats matched up head-to-head. Celtics lead the season series 2-1. As we see those stats, guys, something that sticks out to me is the Celtics are winning in pretty much every category except that rebounding. 48-40. Celtics are getting out rebounded by nearly double digits this season in the first 3 games of this series against the Detroit Pistons. We were talking about it earlier. I mentioned that I believe it was the game before the All-Star break, if I'm not mistaken. The Celtics only had 7 rebounds in the second half in that loss to Detroit, Seamus. What are the Celtics going to do Friday? Because this is another physical, tough, young, gritty team. They just lost by 6 to the Chicago Bulls. They're 6 of their last 4. Won 6 of their last 10 games. They won 4 of their last 5. This Detroit team, their record shows lottery, but since the All-Star break, they've been having one hell of a post-All-Star break.
Yeah, and against the Pistons, the Celtics, they simply just have to bring it. Because it's one of those things, you look at their performance tonight, and it's easy to go, well, they needed to do that again against the Pistons. Right. Well, you actually have to go and bring it against a team like the Pistons because multiple times this season already, the Pistons have come out and completely, especially on the boards, and they're not like they're going to give you a clear runway every single time to the rim, whether you're on offense or on defense, to go out and grab a rebound. The Pistons are going to, they're a young team. They're fun to watch. If you actually I know they watch teams like the Pistons and the Rockets and the Magic on a nightly basis, but some of these young teams, they're pretty fun to watch when, there's really nothing at stake. They go out there and they play hard, and the Pistons are certainly one of those teams that, like you mentioned, in the last couple of weeks, they've been turning it up a little bit. They can go out there and grab, a really quality win over a really good team on any night. And the Celtics, if they want to go out there and win that game, they have to go in there physical with a young team. They have to go in there and prove that, hey, we are an aggressor in the Eastern Conference. We're going to go in there and handle these guys because we are supposed to be at the top of the East. Celtics, it's not an important game. Every game is going to be important, but it's not necessarily an important, statement game. But it is a game where you want to go out there and handle because, of where they want to go at the end of the season.
Yeah, and it's really important. And I don't remember, but I don't think, was Robert Williams there for the second game, the one in Detroit? Because I remember he wasn't there for the game right after the All-Star break. Or right before the All-Star break. Was he playing? Did he play that second time they played the Pistons? I don't remember if he did or not.
I could check on that.
Let's see.
So that was the game Pritchard went off,
yes,
right?
Yeah. I don't remember if Robert Williams played that game, but regardless.
He played 26 minutes.
The game after the back-to-back, the back-to-back against the Pistons after the Philly game where we beat Philly by 50, I believe Marcus Smart and Amber Williams missed that game.
Yeah, they were.
So that was the game that they didn't play.
Rob was out the second one too, but yeah, it's going to be really important for the Celtics to win this game against the Pistons. They have to get the job done against teams that, they might have a lesser looking record, but Cade Cunningham is a star in the NBA. I love watching Cade Cunningham play. He's an amazing player, and even with the team that he has around him, he's getting the best out of them. I mean, he's getting the best out of guys like, Isaiah Stewart, Killian Hayes has been a lot better as of recently. I mean, Hamidou Diallo, Kelly Olynyk is there. I mean, you have a lot of good
Bey.
pieces. Sadiq Bey, Jeremy Grant, they have a lot of good pieces. They're, who knows? Maybe in a few years they might make a Grizzlies type run on the back of Cade Cunningham. Who knows? But the Pistons have a really bright future, and they're a hard-nosed team. They don't really care who they're playing. They don't care if you're first in the West, first in the East, last in the West, last in the East. I mean, they're going to play you hard, and they're just going to go out there and give it everything. And, the Celtics, they just have to keep focused. They can't have any lapses in play. That's obviously that hasn't been a problem over the last month or so, but there are times in a game where a team can just, they can just have a lapse mentally. And for, 5 minutes, it goes from maybe a 12-point lead to all the way down to a 2-point lead or something like that. So it's going to be really important for the Celtics to stay in the game mentally the entire time, and they're going to be back in TD Garden. So you already know the Garden's going to go crazy. So
they should. Little standings update here before we leave. As we just talked about, the Chicago Bulls defeated the Detroit Pistons 114-108 in regulation. They pick up 40-26. Celtics with the 115-101 win over the Charlotte Hornets. They improved to 40-27, just a half a game back from Chicago in that fourth spot. The Miami Heat, without Jimmy Butler, got trounced on their home court by the Phoenix Suns, who they didn't have CP. They did not have Devin Booker either. 111-90.
No, Devin Booker played.
Did he play? He's back from COVID, so that was quick.
Cam Johnson
Yeah, he did play. That's my fault. But big win for Phoenix. Celtics pick up a half a game on Miami, who's in first place right now. The Toronto Raptors, 34-30. They're up by 8 against the San Antonio Spurs. And then an Eastern Conference Finals rematch between the Bucks and the Hawks. That's coming down to the final few shots here, 120-112 with about 2 minutes to go in favor of the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll be back here Friday night, post-game live against the Detroit Pistons. Celtics pick up a 115-101 victory over the Charlotte Hornets. Celtics have now won 4 straight games. I'm Justin Lowe alongside Seamus Darlingo, a.k.a. Celtics Every Day. Underneath us is Ian Angelo. Take care, everybody. We will see you Friday night